Today, significant developments unfolded across the United States and Latin America. A new report highlights a concerning decline in freedom within the United States, while a key U.S. ally has severed diplomatic ties with Cuba. Meanwhile, drama continues at the Federal Reserve. Starting in the United States, the nation's index for freedom has reached its lowest point in over 50 years. According to the U.S. organization Freedom House, the index fell by 3 points to 81 last year under President Donald Trump. This marks the poorest score since the survey began in 1972. While Freedom House still categorizes the United States as free, its score now falls below several European nations and South Korea, sitting on par with South Africa. The organization attributes this decline to dysfunction within the legislative branch, dominance by the executive, growing pressure on freedom of expression, and government efforts to undermine anti-corruption safeguards. In related domestic news, the U.S. government's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has purchased a warehouse in Utah from DWS, a subsidiary of Deutsche Bank. The facility is reportedly intended to serve as a detention center for thousands of migrants. DWS clarified that the property belonged to a U.S. real estate fund they managed in a fiduciary capacity and was subsequently sold. The firm stated it is not involved in the buyer's decisions regarding the facility's future use. Looking ahead for immigration policy, Markwayne Mullin, the designated successor to the dismissed U.S. Homeland Security Secretary, has signaled a shift in approach for ICE. During his Senate nomination hearing on Wednesday, Mullin expressed his desire to move ICE away from the front line. He stated his 6-month goal is to ensure that the agency's operations no longer dominate daily headlines. Mullin aims to restore public trust in the agency, proposing that immigration and customs enforcement officers present judicial warrants before entering homes or businesses to apprehend undocumented migrants. However, he noted this would not apply when pursuing serious criminals. Mullin also indicated a less radical plan for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, stating it should be restructured rather than abolished, contrary to previous plans. His nomination awaits Senate approval. Turning to Latin America, Costa Rica, a close ally of the U.S. government, has announced the severance of its diplomatic relations with Cuba. Conservative President Rodrigo Chavez declared that the Costa Rican government does not recognize the legitimacy of the communist regime in Cuba. Havana quickly criticized the decision, viewing it as part of a U.S. government offensive to isolate Cuba from other countries in the region. Costa Rican Foreign Minister Arnoldo Andre stated that the embassy in Havana would be closed in response to human rights violations and the suppression of opposition figures in Cuba. Cuba has been asked to withdraw its diplomatic personnel from Costa Rica, with only consular officials permitted to remain. This move makes Costa Rica the second Latin American nation, following Ecuador, to break diplomatic ties with Cuba in less than 2 weeks. Against a backdrop of increasing tensions with Washington, active support for the socialist Caribbean state from most Latin American countries has diminished, with Mexico's left-leaning government being the sole exception. The region has recently experienced a significant shift to the right, with right-wing politicians close to U.S. President Donald Trump coming to power in countries like Bolivia and Argentina, which were formerly allies of Cuba. Finally, on the economic front, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has made it clear he could remain in office longer than initially planned, even against the wishes of U.S. President Donald Trump. On Wednesday, following the Federal Reserve meeting in Washington, Powell stated that if his successor is not confirmed by the end of his term, he would serve as interim chairman, as mandated by law. President Trump has been a vocal critic of the 73-year-old Powell, calling him names like idiot and loser for not implementing the drastic interest rate cuts Trump desired. Trump had nominated former U.S. Central Bank Governor Kevin Warsh to succeed Powell after his regular term ends on May 15th. However, Warsh's confirmation by the U.S. Senate is currently on hold. This delay stems from justice investigations initiated by Trump himself against Powell concerning allegedly inflated costs related to the renovation of the Federal Reserve building in Washington. These developments highlight a complex and dynamic period, encompassing domestic freedoms, immigration policies, shifting geopolitical alliances, and economic leadership challenges. What's your take on U.S. freedom drops? Cuba Relations Severed, Fed drama. Share your view in the comments. Do you think this will matter in the next news cycle? This video was generated using artificial intelligence.